Minneapolis, the city of lakes, the birthplace of legends, and apparently a hotspot for the supernatural. You'd think with all the cold winters here, ghosts would just head south for the season. But nope, they're chilling right here year-round. And when I say chilling, I mean that in more ways than one. Now, we all know Minneapolis is the home of Prince. The man gave us Purple Rain, and honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if half the ghosts here are still dancing to it in the afterlife. But let's not forget the Timberwolves. Minneapolis might just have more ghosts than Anthony Edwards has kids. This city isn't all basketball heartbreak and ghost tours, though. It's also a place full of local quirks. They have the Mall of America nearby, where you can shop till you drop. And if you drop too hard, who knows, maybe you'll stick around forever as one of the mall's unofficial residents. Just picture a ghost riding the roller coaster. Now that's a season pass you don't want. And then there's the weather. Minneapolis winters are very brutal. Imagine freezing to death twice. That's dedication. The real horror here isn't the ghosts. It's scraping ice off your windshield at 6 a.m. But don't worry, the city isn't all doom and gloom. Minneapolis also has its fair share of quirky charm. Lakes that are beautiful by day and allegedly haunted by night. Neighborhoods with century-old homes that creak a little too much, and bars where you're not sure if the guy next to you is a local, or someone who's been local for the last 100 years. So buckle up, because we're diving headfirst into the most haunted spots this city has to offer. From theaters that echo with voices long gone, to cemeteries where the dead might just be more talkative than your average Minnesotan, Minneapolis is about to show us its spooky side. Grab your parka, pour yourself a hot coffee, extra hot, because trust me, you'll need it. And let's take a ghostly tour of Minneapolis, the city where the spirits never sleep. Are you ready for some haunted history? Welcome to Screamville. On a moonlit night in Minneapolis, the Washington Avenue Bridge looms over the dark Mississippi River like a silent sentinel. The two-tiered span that shuttles cars below and students above by day takes on a different persona after midnight. Its concrete pillars and steel girders seem to absorb the whispers of history, and the usual cheerful bustle of campus life falls away into an eerie quiet. By day, thousands cross this utilitarian bridge between classes, but after dusk its reputation begins to creep in, the sense that unseen eyes might be watching from the shadows. Locals have long murmured that this bridge has ghosts in its bones, and on nights like this it's easy to believe something otherworldly lingers here. Back when Minneapolis was young, an earlier incarnation of this bridge first spanned the river in 1884. That old iron truss carried horse-drawn carriages and streetcars, linking the city's east and west banks before the University of Minnesota campus even looked as it does today. The present bridge opened in 1965 as a modern upgrade, a broad-shouldered structure with an enclosed pedestrian deck up top and traffic lanes rumbling below. Every day, it connects the university's east and west bank campuses, stitching together academic worlds across the water. Generations of students have trekked its length, braving winter winds inside that upper deck tunnel. Little did they know they were treading through a place steeped in both history and tragedy, a place now whispered to be one of Minneapolis's most haunted. The bridge's darker history is no secret. Over the years, it gained an unfortunate reputation as a suicide bridge, a place where troubled souls have met a tragic end. The most famous was John Berryman, a celebrated university professor and Pulitzer Prize-winning poet who leapt from the bridge one cold January morning in 1972. His death shocked the community, and sadly, it wasn't the last. At least half a dozen others have taken their lives here in the decades since. Each loss has weighed on the bridge, layering it with sorrow. It's little wonder that whispers of ghostly happenings soon followed. After so much heartbreak and trauma on this spot, many believe the very structure has absorbed those heavy emotions, imprinting the bridge with restless spirits seeking solace. Not long after these tragedies, students and night watchmen alike began to report strange encounters on the bridge. Walk across the upper deck late at night, and you might hear it. An extra set of footsteps echoing behind you on the empty walkway. More than one lone walker has felt the hair on their neck rise at the sound of these phantom footfalls keeping pace. When they nervously turn around, they find nothing but an expanse of silent concrete, as if some invisible companion had been matching their stride. Some have even felt a presence, that unmistakable prickling sensation of being watched, when no living soul is near. In the dead of night, with only dim campus lights flickering, even a skeptic might quicken their pace, heart pounding, unwilling to look back a second time. The ghost most often linked to the Washington Avenue Bridge is said to be Professor Berryman himself. According to campus lore, the troubled poet's spirit never fully departed after his fatal leap. There are hushed stories of a figure appearing at the railing, a bearded man in old-fashioned attire gazing into the black waters below, who vanishes when approached. Some storytellers claim Berryman's ghost still paces the bridge at odd hours, as if caught in a loop of his final moments, letting out a despairing sob before dissolving into the air. Other spirits are rumored to keep him company too. The bridge is believed to be haunted by the many souls who jumped and never returned. Late at night, students have reported faint whispers on the wind, or a blurred shape flitting at the very edge of their vision. Whether it's Berryman or another unfortunate spirit, the Washington Avenue Bridge seems to have no shortage of ghostly tenants if local legends are to be believed. Eyewitness tales over the years have only fueled the bridge's haunted reputation. One oft-repeated account describes a student crossing on a gusty autumn night who heard heavy bootsteps behind him. Thinking it was a friend playing a prank, he laughed and said, "Very funny." But the laughter died in his throat as the footsteps continued right past him, and no one was there. Others speak of strange lights, tiny orbs or flickers, appearing in the corners of the walkway, dancing briefly and then winking out. And in a dramatic twist, some even insist that flags mounted along the bridge have been torn off their poles by unseen hands during calm nights. It's as if some prankish phantom enjoys startling the living. Skeptics, of course, will point out Minneapolis's notorious winds as the culprit, though try telling yourself it's just the wind when a flag suddenly rips free with a ghostly flourish. Even the campus skeptics have been known to get spooked on this bridge. In one humorous episode, two student reporters set out to investigate the hauntings by spending a midnight vigil on the pedestrian deck, Ouija board in hand. Huddled on a bench with fingers on the planchette, they earnestly invited any spirit to chat. The planchette began to move, spelling out gibberish. The eager investigators rearranged letters, hoping for a message. In the end, the mischievous spirits, if there were any, told them absolutely nothing at all. The board spelled nothing. Perhaps the ghosts weren't interested in interviews that night, or maybe they were having a laugh at the students' expense. Still, that spooky stakeout wasn't for nothing. The reporters left with plenty of goosebumps and confirmation that the Washington Avenue Bridge can feel incredibly creepy after midnight. In a way, the hauntings are a tribute, a way of remembering those who died here. The ghosts ensure that these individuals aren't forgotten as just statistics. Instead, they've become characters in an enduring campus legend, patrolling the bridge on eternal night watch. The soap factory in Minneapolis has one of those histories that practically begs for ghost stories. Built in the 1880s as a warehouse and later converted into the National Purity Soap Company, the hulking brick building was filled with vats of boiling fat, endless steam, and hard labor. The legend goes that soap wasn't just made from animal byproducts but also from the occasional unlucky soul. One rumor claims a worker tumbled into a vat and met his bubbly end, and some say his anguished cries can still be heard echoing through the basement. Not the kind of squeaky clean legacy you want attached to your brand. After the soap business fizzled out in the 1980s, The building sat abandoned until a group of artists transformed it into a gallery in the mid-1990s. When they moved in, they discovered the walls coated with decades of soap residue and old animal fat, which already set the stage for some paranormal fun. Volunteers joked about demonic presences while scrubbing down the place in hazmat suits. You could almost picture ghosts shaking their heads like, "Seriously? You're turning my factory of doom into an art gallery?" It wasn't long before strange happenings began. Workers and visitors reported shadowy figures lurking in the corners and child-sized footprints mysteriously appearing on dusty floors when no kids were around. Lights would flicker or fall with no explanation, and some swore they felt cold hands brush against them in the basement. The vibe was less artsy cool warehouse and more, the building is alive and actively judging your installation piece. The artists leaned into it. By 2007, the Soap Factory launched the haunted basement attraction every October. Guests had to sign waivers, and safe words were issued for those who couldn't handle the scares. The organizers pumped in smells of rotting flesh, urine, and sulfur to make sure your nose suffered along with your nerves. It was so scary that people sometimes fainted or swung at the actors, which was probably the only job in Minneapolis where you could proudly say, "Yeah, I got punched in the ribs for art." Even outside the Halloween theatrics, ghost hunters couldn't resist the lure of the old factory. Paranormal groups reported catching eerie voices on tape, like a woman begging for help or a deep voice growling, "Get out." Others picked up cold spots, electromagnetic spikes, and strange orbs. For a while, the Soap Factory was hailed as the most haunted building in Minneapolis, a sort of must-see for people who enjoy both art installations and supernatural trauma. But the place wasn't all doom and gloom. Staff often joked that the ghosts were actually helpful, flicking lights for dramatic effect or rearranging props like overzealous stagehands. Some actors in the haunted basement even blamed wild improvisations on being possessed by the building, which was either a great excuse or a serious case of method acting. The humor kept things balanced, because when you're dealing with centuries of spectral soap residue, sometimes you just have to laugh. In true Minneapolis fashion, the ending is quirky. The Soap Factory nonprofit closed in 2019, and the building was repurposed into office and wellness spaces. Yes, the same basement once filled with fake blood, jump scares, and possibly a very angry poltergeist now houses a spa and yoga studios. Imagine ghosts looking baffled as someone does hot yoga where vats of fat once boiled. Maybe the spirits are finally enjoying some aromatherapy. It's certainly an upgrade from sulfur fumes. Today, the Soap Factory remains a legend in local ghost lore. Tours still point it out as one of the city's most haunted spots, with stories of tortured workers, mischievous spirits, and unforgettable screams. Whether you believe in the hauntings or not, the Soap Factory proves that some places never quite wash their hands of the past. And if you do happen to catch a whiff of sulfur or hear a whisper urging you to get out while passing by, don't panic. It might just be the ghost of a very overworked janitor reminding you that even the dead appreciate personal space. Minneapolis City Hall is one of those places where history and hauntings walk hand in hand. By day, the building is a fortress of government business, all granite walls, soaring arches, and a massive clock tower that looks like it belongs on a castle. By night, though, the echoing hallways can make even the toughest janitor walk a little faster. Over the decades, countless employees, police officers, and night guards have whispered about strange sounds, slamming doors, and voices that don't quite belong to the living. It's almost as if City Hall refuses to close up shop when the clock strikes midnight. The building itself is steeped in history. Completed in stages between the late 1800s and early 1900s, it was originally a two-in-one powerhouse, Minneapolis's government offices and the county courthouse. It even had jail cells tucked up in the South Tower, and yes, a gallows. Nothing says welcome to City Hall quite like an execution chamber above the 5th floor. The architecture was meant to impress, and it did. But when you house cops, criminals, and courtrooms all under one roof, you're bound to collect some dark stories too. The most notorious tale centers on John Moshik, a small-time crook who, in 1898, found himself tried and sentenced to hang for murder. His execution was carried out right there in the building, but it went horribly wrong. Instead of a quick neck snap, the trapdoor dropped, and Moshik slowly strangled to death in front of witnesses. To add insult to injury, doctors had even tried to hypnotize him beforehand, thinking it might somehow make the hanging smoother. Spoiler, it did not. It was the first and last hanging at City Hall, and locals say Moshik never forgave anyone for the botched job. Not long after, the very courtroom where he was convicted gained a reputation for bad luck. Stories circulated that people working in the judge's old office had strange things happen, photographs tumbling from the walls, workers suddenly getting sick, and in some cases even dying in unsettling ways. Coincidence? Maybe. But when your office decor starts jumping off the walls, it's easy to believe a restless ghost is making a statement. The city eventually dismantled the old courtroom during a remodel, but many believe the bad energy never left. Then there are the stories from the jail floor. For more than a century, inmates and guards alike have reported seeing a strange figure wandering the block. He's usually described as a disheveled man in nothing but old-fashioned underwear. Yes, apparently the afterlife has no dress code. Prisoners have screamed that some half-naked man was peering at them through the bars, only for guards to rush in and find nothing. Security monitors showed no one there, but the complaints kept coming. Imagine being locked up, and your biggest fear isn't the other inmates. It's the ghost in boxer shorts. It doesn't stop there. City Hall staff working late have heard footsteps echoing in empty corridors and seen shadows darting just out of sight. Cold gusts of air blow across the 5th floor, right where the execution happened, even when the building's heating system says otherwise. Lights flicker without reason, and heavy wooden doors sometimes creak open as if pushed by invisible hands. Janitors mutter that papers and decorations won't stay put. Skeptics will tell you it's just an old building with drafts and faulty wiring. But when someone swears a voice whispered their name in an empty hall, it's hard not to get goosebumps. Over time, the stories of John Moshik's ghost became local folklore. So much so that ghost tours in Minneapolis love to include City Hall on their route. No one has ever captured him on camera or dragged him out in chains, but his legend is sticky. 100 years of eerie experiences will do that. Whether he's actually haunting the halls or not, the tale has become part of the building's identity. Some even joke that he's the city's most consistent night shift worker, still hanging around the office more than a century after his sentence. In the end, Minneapolis City Hall is both a monument of civic pride and a stage for one of the city's most chilling legends. You don't have to believe in ghosts to enjoy the story, but it's hard to deny the atmosphere of the place. Those granite walls have seen justice, tragedy, and maybe a little unfinished business. So the next time you pass by that towering clock, remember, there might just be someone inside still waiting for an appeal. And if you hear footsteps behind you in an empty hallway, don't worry. It's probably just the guy in his underwear doing his rounds. The Fauché Tower cuts an imposing figure on the Minneapolis skyline, and it has a haunted reputation to match. Built in 1929 by the flamboyant businessman Wilbur Fauché, the tower was his attempt to cement a legacy. Instead, the stock market crash wiped him out, and his name became synonymous with financial scandal. It's no wonder people say his spirit still roams the building. He poured his heart, fortune, and a whole lot of hubris into those marble floors and brass elevators, and apparently, he never quite left. One of the most famous ghostly tales is that of Wilbur himself. Guests and staff have reported seeing a well-dressed man in a pinstripe suit and fedora riding the elevator late at night. He doesn't speak, doesn't push any buttons, and tends to vanish just as you work up the courage to ask, "Hey, aren't you the guy who built this place?" It's a classic Fauché move. Get in the elevator, don't pay for the ride, and leave everybody else holding the bill. Then there are the phantom footsteps. Security guards have claimed that while doing late-night rounds, they'll hear heels clicking on the marble floors just behind them. When they stop to look around, the footsteps keep going a beat longer before disappearing. Nothing says, "You're not alone," like a ghost who insists on being just out of sync, like the world's creepiest dance partner. If you're lucky, maybe they'll even try to moonwalk, though probably not as smooth as Prince, who, fittingly, grew up just a few miles away. Another spirit tied to the building is said to be Genevieve Clark, a juror from Fauche's trial. According to legend, she was deeply shaken by the whole ordeal, and her life ended in tragedy not long after. Her spirit supposedly lingers in the upper floors, bringing with it a wave of sorrow and anger. Visitors sometimes report sudden chills or overwhelming sadness in certain corridors, as if Genevieve is still side-eyeing Fauché for dragging her into his mess. If you walk through one of those invisible clouds of resentment, don't take it personally. You're just in the crossfire of a 90-year-old grudge match. The observation deck at the top of the tower has its own supernatural soundtrack. People have reported hearing faint strains of music on the wind, sometimes sounding like a brass band. This ties back to the tower's grand opening, when Wilbur Fauché threw a 3-day party and even had John Philip Sousa compose a special march for the occasion. Apparently, the Afterlife playlist is stuck on repeat, and Sousa's ghostly trumpets still warm up the Minneapolis night sky. Who needs Spotify when you have a spectral marching band? Down on the 27th floor, where the Prohibition Bar now resides, things get even stranger. Bartenders have told stories of glasses sliding across the counter on their own, or bar stools sinking down as if someone invisible just joined them for a drink. More than one late-night patron has raised a glass to find their toast mysteriously answered with a clink from nowhere. If you're ever there after hours, don't be alarmed if the chandelier flickers. It's probably just Wilbur approving of your cocktail choice. Hopefully, he's not too offended you paid with a debit card instead of investing in his can't-fail business plan. Of course, not all the ghosts are solemn or stern. Some seem downright playful. Elevators opening and closing with no one inside, lights flickering when jokes are made about Wilbur's failed fortune, and even the occasional phantom laugh echoing down the hall have all been reported. It's as if the building's spirits enjoy messing with visitors just enough to keep them on edge. After all, if you're stuck haunting a skyscraper for eternity, you might as well make it entertaining. When you step out of the tower and look back up at its glowing crown, it's hard not to imagine Wilbur leaning out of a window high above, grinning at the city he once tried to conquer. He didn't get the empire he wanted, but he did get immortality, just not the kind he planned. The Fauché Tower may now be a swanky hotel, but beneath the polished brass and glass, the ghosts are still very much on the payroll. If you visit, don't worry, they're less terrifying than they are mischievous. Think of it as checking into Minneapolis's tallest haunted house, where the elevator rides come with extra passengers and the bar pours for both the living and the dead. The Minneapolis Institute of Art is one of those places that seems too elegant and refined to possibly be haunted. But of course, that's what makes it the perfect setting for ghost stories. Built in 1915, the museum holds tens of thousands of priceless works of art. But ask any night guard or longtime employee, and you'll hear whispers that not all the residents of the museum are made of oil and canvas. After closing, when the crowds are gone and the lights dim, the place doesn't feel empty at all. Footsteps echo down corridors, doors close on their own, and laughter occasionally rings out in rooms that should be silent. It's as if some of the art brought a little extra baggage with it from the afterlife. One of the most famous tales involves a security guard who nodded off in the basement control room. He was startled awake by the sound of tapping on the glass, only to see a wrinkled old woman in an elegant cream gown staring him down like a disappointed grandmother. She shook her finger at him for daring to nap on the job, then calmly floated through the closed door and disappeared. Later, staff compared her appearance to a painting hanging upstairs called Mrs. T in cream silk, number 2. If true, this means the lady in the portrait occasionally steps out of her frame to handle HR violations personally. The museum's period rooms are especially notorious. The Tudor room, with its dark wood and Renaissance-era design, has given more than one janitor a good scare. One worker heard slow, heavy footsteps behind him while he cleaned, only to turn and find absolutely no one there. In that kind of atmosphere, even a squeaky shoe can feel like Shakespeare's ghost coming to critique your mop technique. The Connecticut room might be the crown jewel of haunted spaces in the museum. Visitors and guards alike report strange chills, curtains that open or close on their own, and even unseen hands tugging on their clothing. One unlucky employee entered to find the heavy bed curtains drawn tightly as if someone inside had wanted privacy. On another occasion, a tall shadow was spotted standing in the doorway, staring silently into the room. A paranormal group even suggested that the antique bed might have brought along a ghostly gentleman who refuses to give up his prime sleeping spot. Talk about refusing to check out at closing time. It's not just staff who have experienced odd happenings. A visitor once described stepping into the Connecticut room, instantly feeling chilled to the bone, and then having her phone mysteriously shut down just as she tried to take a photo of the chandelier. The device sprang back to life only after she left the room, almost as if the ghost had said, "No paparazzi, please." If you've ever had your electronics fail at the worst possible moment, you know the frustration. Though usually, it's not because an 18th century spirit doesn't like being photographed. Over the years, these tales have become part of the museum's lore, shared on ghost tours and Halloween specials. Locals love to whisper that the spirits are simply keeping an eye on the treasures, making sure nobody gets too handsy with the exhibits. After all, if you've been stuck in a museum for a few centuries, you might as well keep busy by scaring the interns and rearranging the curtains. What makes the stories so fun is how they blend seamlessly with the art itself. The museum is full of portraits of stern-looking figures, antique furniture that looks like it could swallow you whole, and historic rooms that feel frozen in time. It doesn't take much imagination to believe that some of the former owners or painted subjects might still be hanging around. Maybe they're just admiring the curatorial work, or maybe they're bitter about the lack of decent coffee in the afterlife. So the next time you stroll through the galleries, pause and listen. That chill down your spine might not just be the air conditioning. If you hear footsteps when no one's there, or if a pair of eyes seems to follow you a little too closely, don't panic. Just smile, nod politely, and remember, even in Minneapolis, the Art Museum has a guest list that extends well beyond the living. And there you have it, the most haunted places in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A city where the ghosts are just as stubborn as the winters and probably just as talkative as the crowd at a Vikings tailgate. We've seen spirits lurking in old buildings, whispers in historic halls, and maybe even a few phantoms that didn't get the memo Prince already left the stage. Honestly, if there's a ghost karaoke bar out there, you know they're still belting out Purple Rain. So the next time you're wandering through this city of lakes, don't just look out for the skyline, the art museums, or that one guy at Target Field still talking about the Twins' last playoff win. Keep an eye out for what's lurking in the shadows. You never know if it's history or something haunting it. Thanks for joining me on this ghostly tour of Minneapolis. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe because you don't want to miss where the EMF detector takes me next. Could be another haunted city, could be a creepy back road, heck, maybe even the Mall of America food court. Until then, stay spooky, stay warm, and remember, in Minneapolis, you might not always see the ghosts, but they definitely see you.